We've come to chapter 11, called Bruce Bogtrotter and the Cake. We've also just finished in the previous chapter seeing Miss Trunchbull terrorizing Amanda Thripp, the little girl with the braids, throwing the hammer, which was actually throwing the girl. In this chapter, we have the whole of the school in the assembly hall, and there's the interaction between Miss Trunchbull and Bruce Bogtrotter, this child. Let us see what happens here. The chapter opens with Lavender and Matilda reflecting about what they've just seen with Amanda Thripp. Of course, the shock and horror is that it seems like Miss Trunchbull is able to carry on with this behavior and nobody seems to stop her. What happens is that Lavender says that having caring parents, she thinks that if she were to raise it with her father, he would absolutely come through for her and protect her and put an end to all of this. So this is Matilda's response. No, he wouldn't, Matilda said, and I'll tell you why. He simply wouldn't believe you. Of course he would. No, he wouldn't, Matilda said, and the reason is obvious. Your story would sound too ridiculous to be believed, and that is Trunchbull's great secret. What is? Lavender asked. Matilda said, never do anything by halves if you want to get away with it. Be outrageous. Go the whole hog. Make sure everything you do is so completely crazy, it's unbelievable. No parent is going to believe this pigtail story, not in a million years. Mine wouldn't. They'd call me a liar. There's a few expressions we can look at over here which are interesting. So the first one is to raise a terrific stink. A stink is a bad smell. To raise a stink is basically to make a great big fuss, to go and complain, to criticize something that's happened. In this case, Lavender would say her father would raise a terrific stink, means that her father would go and complain and make a lot of trouble for something that happened. The next one is to do anything in halves. So Matilda says Mrs. Trunchbull wouldn't do anything in halves, comes from the expression to do things in half measure. To do things in half measure means to just do part of the work. It's a little bit reluctant. It's a critical expression to say that someone isn't putting their heart into it and isn't creating much value. Whereas Miss Trunchbull here doesn't do anything by halves, means does everything, and so goes the whole hog, which is the last expression we want to look at. The hog is a pig, but the whole hog means to do everything to the fullest extent, to really, really put everything into it. And as we have seen, that is right of Miss Trunchbull, who is very extreme in her actions. And so, in so doing, she goes the whole hog. The theme covered here is very much adults, children, and power. It's a description of Miss Trunchbull and how she uses her power over the children, and really to an extent over everybody within her realm of power as a headmistress, it seems. Matilda, in being able to explain or see through why Miss Trunchbull behaves in this way, is very much showing her wisdom beyond purely academic, and in this ability to pinpoint Miss Trunchbull's actions and why she wants to do them. So we see that Matilda also is capable of understanding why people behave in certain ways and their minds and how they work, which is a very, very important quality. She's also pointing out that Lavender's father in this scenario would be of no help. Miss Trunchbull's actions create such ridiculous anecdotes that there's no way that they are going to have any effect on the parents, and more likely make the children look like fools. So Miss Trunchbull, when she chooses to torment the children, she holds power on over them. She is very much putting them in a position where they feel unsafe with her, but also have no recourse, are unable to go to their own parents to be protected. And therefore, we see that it's not just Matilda who is exposed. It's not just Matilda who is a victim in this circumstance, but all children as a result of Miss Trunchbull's terrifying actions and really uncontrolled violence sometimes against the children. That all of the children have essentially no help, and that maintains Miss Trunchbull's power over everybody over there. Miss Trunchbull, in front of the whole of the school, calls up Bruce Bogtrotter, and he obviously senses that this is not because he has won a prize or he is going to be commended for anything, so he's a little bit suspicious. And as he goes up, in fact, Miss Trunchbull explains to everybody that he has eaten a slice of her cake, and after various insults, then changes her tone and tells him to thank the cook for the cake, which he obviously enjoyed and he admits to have enjoyed. Now, we already feel that there's something odd over here because Miss Trunchbull herself is not a very polite person, and so to be coaching Bruce in terms of thanking the cook is once again not right. So we also know that Bruce, due to the conversation that Matilda and Lavender just had, cannot rely on any adults to save him. And this goes into how all of the school is also under Miss Trunchbull's powerful, terrific spell. At this point, Miss Trunchbull calls on Cook to bring out a whole other cake, which she presents to Bruce, and Bruce is asked to have a slice and then another slice. And when he refuses, Miss Trunchbull explodes, and this kind of, you start seeing, well, this is where her plan is. "I don't want another slice," the boy said. Suddenly, the Trunchbull exploded. "Eat!" she shouted, banging her thigh with the riding crop. "If I tell you to eat, you will eat. You wanted cake, you stole cake, and now you've got cake. What's more, you're going to eat it. You do not leave this platform, and nobody leaves this hall until you have eaten the entire cake that is sitting there in front of you. Do I make myself clear, Bogtrotter? Do you get my meaning?" Miss Trunchbull basically just wants to punish him. She wants to humiliate him in front of the whole school so that everybody is clear on the fact that once she is crossed, once anybody comes up against her and does anything that doesn't please her, they will be punished and humiliated. And even though the descriptions of her very much show she's intimidating physically as a person, she also holds a riding crop, which is could be used as corporal punishment to hit children. And that in itself is intimidating. And she uses all these terror tactics to keep everybody in line. It's also there's a feeling that when she describes what's in the cake, that there are real eggs and real butter, and you wonder, then is she using the school resources for her own means? Morally questionable, of course, because she's very clear that the cake is just for her, and it kind of indicates that she's saying, you children shouldn't be having these good, real ingredients. And if there were to be any canteen in the school, maybe food served, that the children are having substandard food, while she is enjoying the better stuff. There's also, this also demonstrates, backing up what happened before with Amanda Thripp, she's very creative in her punishments. So she doesn't even need to fall back on physical violence or corporal punishment, which is illegal, in order to terrify the children. Finally, the cook is interesting, as she is described as a very, shriveled, old, or, basically not a very effective and not a very strong personality over here. And it's obvious that she is also terrified because of words such as when she replies to Bruce Bogtrotter, and when she participates in the conversation, it says that she had learned her lines by heart. So Miss Trunchbull had very clearly coached her, you're going to say this and you're going to do that and you're going to do that, and she's delivering on that, probably, likely, because she's petrified of Miss Trunchbull. And also she seems so incredibly uncomfortable to be in that position. And she's described, with her mouth very tight-lipped, a mouth full of lemon juice. It's so beautiful. Lemon juice, well, her mouth isn't full of lemon juice, but it would make your mouth go and be very, very touched, very quiet. That basically is not about to go. Once again, she has no power to go and protect Bruce in this circumstance where she knows he is going to be a recipient of Miss Trunchbull's terrible bullying. Bruce continues to eat the cake, slice by slice. It's described like this. The boy cut himself another thick slice and started eating it fast. There were still no signs of flagging or giving up. He certainly did not look as though he was about to stop and cry out, I can't eat any more. I'm going to be sick. He was still in the running. And now a subtle change was coming over the 250 watching children in the audience. Early on, they had sensed impending disaster. They had prepared themselves for an unpleasant scene in which the wretched boy, stuffed to the gills with chocolate cake, would have to surrender and beg for mercy, and then they would have watched the triumphant Trunchbull forcing more and more and still more cake into the mouth of the gasping boy. Let's look at the vocab quickly. So signs of flagging means signs of giving up. So there were no signs of flagging. So Bruce was being consistent in his eating cake, and he was still in the running. So even though he's had quite a few slices of cake, he was still in the running. That means he's not about to give up. He was, again, it sounds like he's being consistent. Stuffed to the gills are in fish. It's how they breathe. So stuffed to the gills is an expression that means you're really you're so full, you're stuffed to the gills, that you've eaten far, far too much. This passage just makes a sense, the subtle change of mood, where initially everybody is despaired and they think that there's no way this is going to work. And it is through Bruce that we see the perseverance of these children, that they're willing to take on the challenge. They're not going to sit there and cry. And it's funny when you think about even previously with Amanda Thripp, she just bounced off after being thrown. There isn't any part of the book where children really have a massive meltdown. Of course, everything is terrorizing in terms of what Miss Trunchbull does, but they are all very strong-willed children by the looks of it. And so also there's a little bit further on from this passage, there's a little quote. I'll read you this. He says, one sensed that he was almost beginning to enjoy himself. He had a mountain to climb, and he was jolly well going to reach the top or die in the attempt. What is more, he had now become very conscious of his audience and how they were silently rooting for him. This was nothing less than a battle between him and the mighty Trunchbull. Once again, it is this idea that they are fighting injustice, and even though this is all that she wants is to crush him, it's almost as though Bruce is saying, I will not be crushed. I will not be crushed, and give Trunchbull this sense of satisfaction. The cake eating continues, and as we said, there's a change in the mood. And whereas before, probably the students expected this to end in complete disaster, but seeing that Bruce is keeping speed and going on, and almost his mood seems, you know, to have affected the whole hall, and someone even basically pipes up and roots for him, which infuriates Miss Trunchbull. Now, there is this whole the whole description in the chapter just picks up very much on both Bruce Bogtrotter's mood, and also looks at the 250 students watching it and how they change, and how whereas before they thought that they would obviously not be able to root for Bruce because they'd be punished as well. They can't oppose Miss Trunchbull. Now they're starting to build up tenacity as well. Let's refer to the book. So the boy was slowing down now. There was no doubt about that. But he kept pushing the stuff into his mouth with the dogged perseverance of a long-distance runner who has sighted the finish line and knows he must keep going. As the very last mouthful disappeared, a tremendous cheer rose up from the audience, and children were leaping on their chairs and yelling and clapping and shouting, "Well done, Brucey! Good for you, Brucey! You've won a gold medal, Brucey!" The vocab dogged perseverance is essentially just showing great tenacity, great persistence in doing what you're doing. So this is again the theme of the power of injustice. Bruce basically manages to beat Miss Trunchbull at her own game. The students openly celebrate, and they're feeling a lot braver now because there's many of them against one of her, although that doesn't make for a good scenario. But essentially, she put the challenge forward and she was beaten. Miss Trunchbull is furious, and this is her reaction to having her challenge beaten by the student is not fair and square. Okay, this is how it goes. No, she once again turns to physical violence. So she takes the platter and smashes it on Bruce's head. So despite the law, despite a terrible torture session with the cake, which would have been a nightmare for anyone, essentially probably impossible to do in real life, she still turns to physical violence to reassert her power over the children. The end basically is, despite having had a platter crashed on his head, Bruce is so terribly full with cake that it just doesn't affect him. And you also get a feeling that he must be so satisfied with himself that he persevered, that he managed to go all the way through the channel, and that he now has the whole of this audience cheering for him, and they're all on the same wavelength. They all believe that Miss Trunchbull has been beaten, that it ends on a happy note, and well, at least for the students who once again persevere and show their resilience against the power of Miss Trunchbull, the terror of an adult.